For millions, the current system in the private rented sector is failing to provide homes that are safe, secure and affordable for everyone. Mindful of this House's sub judice rules, I'm unable to go into details of some of the appalling cases my constituents have written to me about. However, issues that have been raised with me by private renters include constituents with health conditions such as asthma, whose landlords have left them in damp properties with no gas supply in the middle of winter. Constituents including children who have been hospitalised and suffered serious health impacts as the result of disrepair in their homes. And families living in fear of bailiffs who were served a Section 21 eviction notice by their landlord after complaining about terrible disrepair and conditions. My constituents said, Section 21 takes the humanity out of the situation, and that's precisely the problem. We are human and our lives are being carelessly destroyed. All the constituents who contacted me wanted this government to take urgent action so that nobody in future has to go through the same horrific experiences. Nationally, the private rented sector includes some of the oldest stock in England and remains the tenure with the lowest standards based on the government's own decent homes standard. The latest English housing survey found that 1 in 5 homes in the private rented sector are classed as non-decent, and 12% have a Category 1 hazard where the most serious harm outcome is identified, for example, death, permanent paralysis, permanent loss of consciousness, loss of a limb or serious fractures. So does the Minister know how many serious injuries and deaths have resulted from making people live in such appalling accommodation? To be clear, shamefully, we have a system that means a private renter has over a 1 in 10 chance of living in a home that could kill or seriously harm them or their children. Let that fact sink in, and how can it be allowed to continue? Private rented sector homes also have the worst energy standards on average. This means private renters will have to pay significantly more in heating bills due to poor insulation, inefficient heating systems or lack of double glazing. With the current cost of living crisis starting to bite and energy prices set to soar, private renters really are in a precarious situation. Added to this, it seems complaining puts you on the fast track to eviction. Research from Citizens Advice shows that those complaining to their local authority about disrepair were 46% more likely to get a Section 21 from the landlord. Section 21, the fast track to eviction, must be scrapped. I recently spoke to Professor Ian Byrne, a consultant respiratory paediatrician at the fantastic Older Age Children's Hospital in my constituency, about the health impacts of poor housing conditions. Ian said to me, the consequences of poor quality housing can be fatal for children. The National Child Mortality Database identified poor housing as one of the top risk factors associated with the inequalities that result in children's deaths. If babies and children breathe air rife with fungus, toxins and dust in overcrowded and cold homes, their lungs develop abnormally. Even though we focus on the short-term effects, the problems they face in adulthood are even more stark. The poorest children are 5 times more likely to develop adult diseases like COPD, and chronic illnesses such as this lead to the poorest adults dying 2 decades earlier than the richest ones in Liverpool and many other cities. Poor housing can result in 20 years being taken off your life expectancy. There is a window of opportunity for children to develop and grow, and the state of housing in which millions of children in this country are forced to live is holding them back. That's why good housing for all should be the very essence of any levelling up agenda, or it's all vacuous nonsense. Professor Sinner continued, parents are gaslighted at every opportunity. Landlords deny pest problems, but mothers of premature babies tell us they know there are rats in the house because they see bite marks in their baby's oxygen tubing. Mothers tell us that when they reach for the cereal, there are rodent feces in them. Mothers tell us that their toddlers are afraid to go in rooms because they see mice looking at them through the gaps in the floorboards that still haven't been fixed. While parents are told that damp isn't an issue, They tell us their children are waking up coughing thick mucus every night in rooms riddled with mould, and they are bullied because their clothes smell damp. After listening to that, remind yourself it's 2022 and not 1822. It's clear that the current legislation is failing, and this is compounded by a decade of government cuts to local authority budgets and the cut in access to free legal support. Between 2009 and 2019, local authority budgets to ensure private rental standards were kept up were slashed by 44%. They have lost almost half their capacity to enforce standards. Selective licensing is a tool that local authorities can use to tackle poor property conditions and poor practice within the private rented sector. The landlord licensing scheme in Liverpool, which ran from 2015 to 2020, found that 65% of properties were not fully compliant on the first visit. 37,000 compliance actions were taken to improve conditions, and 250 rogue landlords were prosecuted. I seen this firsthand when I worked with the Honourable Member for Walton, when I was his office manager, and we utilised that to actually tackle rogue landlords. I hope the Minister can enlighten us further in his response why landlord licensing is not operational across the whole country. The regulatory framework for the private rented sector is fragmented, underfunded and, quite frankly, broken. The White Paper and Renters Reform Bill must address these systemic issues. A Renters Reform Bill was promised by the government in 2019. Where is it? Every single day this has been delayed is a day millions spend in cold, insecure, unsafe and unaffordable homes. During the height of the pandemic, renters were trapped in unsafe housing, while the Prime Minister was apparently picking out new wallpaper. And now many renters are fearful of Section 21 evictions if they raise complaints, because they cannot afford to have to move home in the middle of this appalling cost of living crisis. The power imbalance means that the mental pressures facing renters are built into this broken system. The government... Of course it was.
I thank my honourable friend for giving way. I wholeheartedly agree with the points that he's raising, and I thank him for leading this debate. I'm regularly contacted by constituents whose private landlords are refusing to fix issues. These aren't small problems like the examples that my honourable friend raised, from black mould to rat infestations. These are failings that have disastrous impact on my constituents' health and well-being. As it currently stands, tenants who decide to withhold rent from landlords who fail to maintain their properties to standard will be in breach of contract and have next to no protections. Does my honourable friend agree with me that increasing protections for them should form a fundamental part of our strategy when it comes to making the PRS safer and improving conditions overall?
Ian Byrne.
My friend makes some fantastic points, and I fully agree, and I thank her for all the work she does on this issue for their constituency. The government must present the White Paper as a matter of urgency, and new legislation must have real teeth and be enforceable. A Renters Reform Bill must abolish Section 21 and end no false evictions, drive up standards to an updated and improved decent homes standard, and create a national landlord register and licensing scheme to improve accountability and ensure legal standards are met. It works. Liverpool showed that. This is not more red tape, but an investment in the health and well-being of present and future generations. To reinforce this, after government undertaking a cost-benefit analysis of what it means for a child to grow up in a home that is a threat to their health and safety. To finish, let's put ourselves in the shoes of the people whose cases I've outlined. If an MP or a minister was asked to live in a flat riddled with mould and in such a state of disrepair that endangers the life of their family members and may lead to reduced life expectancy, you would rightly hear the howls of rage reverberate from both sides of the chamber. So let's take that fury, let's take that righteous anger and represent with the same force as legislators the millions who are suffering this fate daily and forced into silence because of the unjust system we have. That would be really levelling up, and the Minister knows it. Take on the vested interests and do something transformational. Change the life chances of millions for the better. Surely that's why we're all in this game. This bill must not tinker around the edges of a broken system. This bill shouldn't just move the goalposts. It must empower tenants and hardwire social justice into the system. I know from working with the Minister on numerous bill committees and select committees, he understands the need for change. But deeds will be the measure, not words. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much.